p.m. Eastern is your chance to get answers to all of your questions about the Catholic faith. Featuring priests from the Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest, the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter, the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate, and various dioceses around the United States. Again, that's Ask a Priest Live, weekdays at 6 p.m. Eastern on the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
At the Station of the Cross, we understand that life circumstances can affect your giving options, whether by moving or by switching banks and credit card numbers. Please let us know if recent changes have been made to your payment information so that we can better serve you as you continue to bless us with your financial support. Update your information today at thestationofthecross.com or by calling 1-877-888-6279, extension 104.
30 seconds on the gifts of the Holy Spirit, brought to you by the Station of the Cross. The gift of fortitude aids us in remaining faithful to our vocation and the holy will of God. Do you ever wonder how it's possible for dedicated pro-lifers to persevere week in and week out praying in front of an abortion clinic? Or how married couples can see each other through long-term illnesses and relational difficulties? These individuals illustrate the gift of fortitude in action.
Men of Goodwill, join the National Men's March to abolish abortion and rally for personhood on Saturday, June 7th in Washington, D.C. It's time to stand up to the big lie of abortion without compromise. Defend the preborn. Demand equal protection under the 14th Amendment. 11 a.m., march begins at Washington Surgery Clinic. 12:15 p.m., a rally at Lafayette Park. Men, wear a suit, bring your sons, and be part of the solution. Visit themensmarch.com. That's themensmarch.com. It's time.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network presents Saints and Seasons. On May 21st, we celebrate the feast of St. Godric, Confessor. Godric was born in the mid to late 11th century in Norfolk, England. He began his life as a peddler and eventually began to ply his trade by sea. He worked his way up to become a ship's captain, and some accounts tell of quite a wayward life, even referring to him as a pirate. Whatever the extent of his misdeeds, Godric eventually made his way to Lindisfarne, known as Holy Island. He was immediately struck by the holiness of the monks at the famous abbey, who related to him the inspiring life of St. Cuthbert. Godric prayed for the graces to imitate that great saint, and then made pilgrimages to Jerusalem, Compostela, and elsewhere, before eventually settling in a wilderness called Finkel. There, Godric adopted the austere life of a hermit, full of prayer and fasting. He lived under the authority of the local monastery, who provided a priest for Mass and the sacraments, and permitted such visitors as wished to learn from the holy hermit. The Blessed Virgin Mary herself taught Godric several songs in her honor, and like St. Francis of Assisi, he was known for his way with animals. After many decades in this holy life, Godric died in the year of our Lord 1170 at about 100 years of age. Also honored on this day are St. Hospitius, St. Eugene de Mazenod, the martyrs of the Mexican Revolution, and many other martyrs, confessors, and holy virgins. For more about the saints and seasons of the Catholic Church, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons.
The Catholic Current, bringing Christ to the world and the world to Christ.
And we see the spirit of that thing, entering the church in a very specific way with St. Pius X back at the turn of the last century, and then on into the Second Vatican Council era. And the spirit of a council is the great coming out party of the modernist revolution, which has its roots in that same Enlightenment philosophy of the 18th century.
The Catholic Current, 5 p.m. Eastern, from the Station of the Cross and on the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
This is Joe McClane, and you're listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of the truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McClane starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Michael Hichborn, filling in for Joe McClane, who got stuck in a temporal vortex while passing through the Bermuda Triangle. At 14 past the hour, we'll check in again on Joe's exploits in foreign lands. At 30 past the hour, Dr. Ann Hendershott joins us to discuss her article in Crisis Magazine, Catholics Welcome the Beginning of a Paradigm Shift at the United Nations. Remember, you can always find links to everything we discuss in the program today at our landing page. Go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Before we get into any of that, however, let's begin with prayer. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. And now, your saint of the day.
Saint Godric, pray for us. Godric was born in the mid to late 11th century in Norfolk, England. He began his life as a peddler and eventually began to ply his trade by sea. He worked his way up to become a ship's captain, and some accounts tell of quite a wayward life, even referring to him as a pirate. Whatever the extent of his misdeeds, Godric eventually made his way to Lindisfarne, known as Holy Island. He was immediately struck by the holiness of the monks at the famous abbey, who related to him the inspiring life of Saint Cuthbert. Godric prayed for the graces to imitate that great saint, and then made pilgrimages to Jerusalem, Compostela, and elsewhere before eventually settling in a wilderness called Fincal. There, Godric adopted the austere life of a hermit, full of prayer and fasting. He lived under the authority of the local monastery, who provided a priest for a mass and the sacraments, and permitted such visitors as wished to learn from the holy hermit. The Blessed Virgin Mary herself taught Godric several songs in her honor, and like St. Francis of Assisi, he was known for his way with animals. After many decades in this holy life, Godric died in the year of our Lord 1170 at about 100 years of age. For more about this day and others in the Church's calendar, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons. Saint Godric, pray for us.
And now, here are your headline news. The Hill reports Trump fails to move GOP holdouts on mega bill. President Trump's forceful pitch for House GOP lawmakers to rally around the party's big, beautiful bill fell flat yesterday as two groups of holdouts, hardline conservatives and moderate blue state Republicans, are still demanding changes to win their support. During a nearly 2-hour meeting in the Capitol basement, Trump urged Republicans to support his agenda bill as Speaker Mike Johnson's self-imposed Memorial Day deadline for passing the package inches closer. The president, I don't think, convinced enough people that the bill is adequate the way it is, said Representative Andy Harris, the chair of the conservative House Freedom Caucus. Several members of the Freedom Caucus are among the loudest critics of the legislation. The defiance among both camps is creating a dilemma for Johnson. Taken together, the opposition is more than enough to sink the bill on the floor. Breitbart reports Memorial Day set for lowest adjusted gas prices in over 20 years. A fuel-saving platform said yesterday that it forecasts the national average price of gasoline will be $3.08 a gallon on Memorial Day. That would make it the cheapest since 2021 in nominal terms. After adjusting for inflation, it would be the lowest since 2003. Prices of gasoline expected to average around $3.02 per gallon between Memorial Day and Labor Day, with prices falling below $3 on some days. The last summer, the national average price of gasoline was $3.58 per gallon on Memorial Day. This year's lower price reflects increased oil production that has lowered crude oil prices. A barrel of Brent crude The global standard for oil prices is currently priced at $65.07, down significantly from the $83.71 a year ago. Newsmax reports Trump announces plans for $175 billion Golden Dome defense. President Donald Trump announced yesterday the concept he wants for his future Golden Dome missile defense program, a multi-layered $175 billion system that for the first time will put U.S. weapons in space. Trump said he expects the system to be fully operational before the end of my term, which ends in 2029, and have the capability of intercepting missiles even if they are launched from space. And those are your headline news. Today's gospel comes from John 15, verses 1 through 8. Jesus said to his disciples, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He takes away every branch in me that does not bear fruit, and everyone that does, he prunes so that it bears more fruit. You are already pruned because of the word that I spoke to you. Remain in me, and I remain in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit on its own unless it remains on the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me, and I in him, will bear much fruit. Because without me you can do nothing, and anyone who does not remain in me will be thrown out like a branch and wither. People will gather them and throw them into the fire, and they will be burned. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask for whatever you want, and it will be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples." The Gospel of the Lord. Laus tibi Christi. The commentary for today's Gospel comes from Father Cornelius a Lapide. I am the true vine. Christ here sets forth the parable of the vine and the branches with this end in view, to teach the apostles that they must abide in his faith and love, and not depart therefrom in consequence of his impending passion and death. That this is the great object of the parable is plain from the 9th verse, more especially, abide ye in my love. Christ here compares himself to a vine, not as he is God, as Arius maintained, trying to prove that the Son is inferior to the Father, as being the husbandman, but as a man. For so men are grafted onto him as branches, for they are of the same nature and kind as the vine. Wherefore, St. Hilary says, Christ to this end assumed flesh, that we, fleshly men, might as branches be grafted onto him as the vine. But yet the flesh of Christ would not have had that power of producing vine branches, i.e., faithfully and holy people, unless the Godhead had been united to it. Wherefore, Cyril says that Christ was the vine by reason of his Godhead. St. Augustine saith, although Christ would not have been the vine except he had been man, yet he would not have bestowed his grace upon the branches unless he had been God. You will inquire why Christ compared himself to a vine rather than to an apple or a nut or some other tree. St. Athanasius and others reply, on account of the many qualities of the vine in which it excels other trees, and which admirably fit it to be a type of Christ. These are, first, its most abundant fruit, for it is the most fruitful of all plants. To this David refers, thy wife shall be as the fruitful vine. Second, on account of the sweetness of the fruit. Third, on account of wine, which is made from its fruit, and which makes the heart glad, and which produces many effects, which may be likened to the fruits of the coming of Christ. Fourth, because of all plants, in comparison with the size of its stem, it most widely diffuses its branches. by which the extension of the church is signified, as it is said in, "She spread out her branches into the sea and her boughs into the river." Fifth, the vine has sweet-smelling flowers and very broad leaves, with which it gives shade to other plants. Now, the leaves of Christ are the external graces of preaching, conversing, etc. Sixth, the wine from old vines is best, and the wine from those most recently planted is the most abundant. Some vines live for more than 200 years and then have the flavored wild honey. Seventh, no tree has more durable wood than the vine. Lastly, vines need very assiduous culture. It is necessary to dig the plant, to drain, manure, to prune. Thus, does the church or the holy soul have grafted onto Christ the vine require great and constant care. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. Stay tuned and share us with a friend. We'd be very grateful.
Tired of your phone bills supporting who knows what? iCatholic Mobile is a 5G provider that supports what matters to you. With iCatholic Mobile, every call, text, and even that group chat you can't escape helps support the Station of the Cross. It's a network that connects you to what's good for both your soul and your wallet. More information is available at iCatholicMobile.com. iCatholic Mobile underwrites with the Station of the Cross.
Download the app to take our programming with you wherever you go. Hear what listeners are saying about the regularly updated iCatholic Radio app.
The programs on iCatholic Radio are uplifting, educational, and have served to deepen my faith as a Catholic. Thank you for this amazing station.
Download the free iCatholic Radio app in your Android or Apple store today. Please consider giving us a 5-star review or telling a friend about it.
Please join us in a prayer to our guardian angel. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O holy guardian angel, take care of our soul and body. Enlighten our mind that we may know the Lord better and love him with all our heart. Help us in our prayers so that we may not give in to distractions. Assist us with your advice so that we may see the good and carry it out with generosity. Defend us from the insidious snares of the enemy and sustain us in temptations that we may always be victorious. Remedy our coldness in our worship of the Lord. Cease not to protect us until you have brought us into paradise, where we will praise our good God together for all eternity. Amen.
Welcome back to the program, where we talk about all kinds of things Catholic. The Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Michael Hichborn, and here I am with Jacob. We're going to be talking about things going on with Joe's trip as he traipses through the ancient lands of Greece.
Yes,
Jacob,
indeed.
what have we got?
So we were hoping to get another report live from Joe this morning, but of course, you know, he's not the most reliable connection with internet over there because, you know, he's over in Greece. But we do actually have, he sent me a big album full of images, which, you know, won't help the folks on the radio side, but we will describe some of the places they're going to, and we'll show some stuff for the folks on the video side of things on the show. And I've also got the map up to kind of figure out where Joe is, because, you know, it's, for me, when people talk about, you know, where St. Paul went, they often talk about, oh, yeah, he went to Greece. And you kind of think, oh, okay, yeah, that's that little, you know, area down the bottom of Europe, you know, the Mediterranean or whatever. But it really encompasses a huge region of the Mediterranean, these areas that St. Paul would have visited. because, Greece, it covers a pretty wide expanse of coast now, but it would have covered even more back before, you actually had little nations on the map like, all the Balkan nations, Bulgaria, all that. These would have all been provinces of the Roman Empire, and Greece would have expanded. It would have basically covered a large part of Asia Minor too. So depending on what sources you're reading about St. Paul's travels, they'll say that, it was in Asia Minor, which nowadays we think of as Turkey. But, it would have covered Cyprus.
Turkey,
it would have covered
Iraq.
Crete. Yeah, exactly. It's good sometimes to kind of actually take a look at where he was going and what was there when he was visiting. And I know Joe started off, I believe they landed in Thessaloniki or Saloniki. I'm pretty sure that was the first stop on their trip. But I was looking at their at the images from their album here, and the first thing up is a really interesting church, because on the outside it kind of just looks, and I'll put it up on the screen for those watching on the video side, but it kind of just looks like a normal brick building or stone building. It's not, it doesn't have the elaborate European kind of church exterior that we might be used to if we see, Notre Dame or something like that.
Right.
But it's what's really fascinating. So it's this kind of plain exterior, and then you go inside, and it's just absolutely gorgeous and elaborate. There's icons everywhere. There's candelabra everywhere, huge ones. Like it's just gorgeous marble work. Like it's really incredible. Some of the way that this opens up inside from this kind of unassuming outside. And this is kind of something I actually noticed in Italy. The one place I've actually visited in Europe, I was blessed to visit Italy, and it has a similar kind of sense of things in a lot of the churches. You think of St. Peter's Basilica, it's gorgeous and elaborate on the outside, but a lot of the churches in Italy are these kind of just plain stone facades in a city square, and then you walk inside, and there's like a masterpiece by a great Italian artist on the wall. There's a Raphael above the altar or something, and it's kind of similar apparently in Greece, where they've got fairly plain exteriors, and then inside just incredible mosaics and iconography. Just absolutely gorgeous.
Well, and as a I never actually studied architecture formally, but I have always looked at the architectural structures of various ancient buildings. I love ancient architecture. I find it fascinating. You can see in a couple of pictures that you had there, the Greek columns as opposed to the Roman columns that we're used to. I've always liked Greek columns better than Roman columns. I thought that Greek columns, it's just, I thought they were more ornate, more beautiful.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Roman columns tend to be much bigger and they look more like foundation stones for a continent, but the Greek columns I always thought were a lot more beautiful. And then I really enjoy looking whenever I walk into a building, a new building, an ancient building, whatever it is, the first thing I do is I look up at the ceiling, and I like to see the arches, what they how they structure the ceiling. And so in looking at some of these pictures, I can see the construction of the ceiling, and it's funny the way it almost looks like the interior of a ship.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And that was the first thing that came to mind when I saw it.
Yeah, there's a gorgeous dome over or half dome over the sanctuary, of course. But this one, again, it might be plainer than what someone might expect, but it's still very elaborate. It's obviously made extremely well. But yeah, I love that the interior of a ship effect that you get in some churches, where it really looks like an old wooden ship that you're stepping into, and it harkens back to being inside the bark of St. Peter. So, but I do want to point this out here. This struck my attention. Let me move the images over. So this is a saint. There's a little biography here of a saint, Saint Anicia. In the transversal transept on the left side of the sanctuary, there is the shrine with the holy relics of Saint Anicia, a pious martyr from Thessaloniki. She was born and lived in Thessaloniki during the reign of the great persecutor of the Christians, Maximian, the same time that lived Saint Demetrius. She was a daughter of devout and very rich parents. When her parents died, she gave all her property to the poor people, and she devoted herself to Christ. Once, while she was going to the church, she met a soldier worshiping the idols, who pressed her to deny Christ. When she confessed her faith to the unique and true God, the soldier killed her by lancing her. Her holy body was buried for many years under the earth at an unknown place, when on 4th July, 1980, during public works on 3rd September, on 3rd September Street, near the 3rd Army Corps, was discovered her grave with her holy relics, which were collected and placed in the Church of St. Demetrius. Ever since, they are a source of miracles and a cure for many people who worship her with faith. Her memory is celebrated on 30th December. So here we've got an ancient martyr. This is a martyr from the persecution of Maximian. So that's, I'm trying to remember correctly, I think that's the 2nd century. I think. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But this is a very old martyr story, and her relics were just discovered in 1980, and are a source of miracles. Like we're used to hearing these stories from more recent from older times of they found the relics of the saint and there were miracles, and then aside from a few sites like Lourdes or Fatima, that doesn't really happen anymore. People don't go to these other Sure, we do only think of the big ones. Here's a fairly. She may have been the martyrology, and people knew of her, but they finally discovered her relics in 1980, almost 2,000 years later, and it's this little shrine, and it's producing miraculous cures. So it's still ongoing. All of the, the every aspect of the Catholic faith is still ongoing, even in all these little ways. It's not just, we're not left alone with just a couple of the big Marian shrines nowadays. These things still happen all the time. I found that fascinating when I saw that. I'm going to see if I can show some further images, but if you had any thoughts on that, Michael.
Imagine this young saint waiting almost 2,000 years to start interceding and praying for us and performing miracles on behalf of the faithful.
Exactly.
Just kind of sitting there going, well, they'll find my relics at some point. And
yeah, isn't that great? Yeah, that's which again, there are stories from hagiographies of saints who remained buried for quite a long time. It was just, I believe, Friday was the feast of Saint Andrew Bobola, who was a Lithuanian Jesuit martyr or Polish Jesuit martyr. So this is a few hundred years ago, and his body was lost when the Jesuits had to flee the town. He was martyred by the Cossacks during the Khmelnytsky uprising, and they lost his body, and then not long afterwards, he miraculously appeared to his fellow Jesuits and led them back to where his relics were. But again, this is still a few hundred years ago. Here's 1980. A saint's relics are finally discovered, and there she is, and she's all ready to intercede, and it's a wonderful little just a reminder of how alive every aspect of the Catholic faith is. It's not we're not still just living in the ruins. Like there's life yet. There's still embers in the ashes.
Now, what is this stunning relic that we have here?
I'm pretty sure that's that's Saint Anicia that they were showing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but there's a lot of great photos. I'm looking forward to Joe coming back and being able to kind of explain all the details of where he's been. But they were down in a crypt here under the. I'm not sure if this is the same church of St. Demetrius, but
it looks like the same church.
Yeah, and there's just great. They're visiting the tomb of. I almost said Saint Philip. He's not a saint, but Philip of Macedonia, the father of Alexander the Great. They were able to see his tomb, so they're indulging in just some general history as well, which is great on this trip. But just gorgeous relics. Bishop Strickland was celebrating mass for them there. There's an ancient theater here, and I believe, or an ancient amphitheater. Yes, ancient amphitheater, and there's also images of a church, or the remnants of a church, the Octagon at Philippi, which I believe is it was dedicated to St. Paul. And then this church in particular eventually must have collapsed or just fell into disrepair. I'm not sure exactly of the history of it, but again, we're thinking of Greece, in terms of the nation that exists now, but the Greeks controlled this wide range of the Eastern Mediterranean, and then eventually the Romans took it over. And a lot of major Christian sites from the early exploits of the apostles have been almost lost thanks to the invasions from Islam and just the fall of Rome.
Right.
And I wanted to ask you, Michael, because you have been to Turkey recently.
Yes, last year.
Can you tell us what, we've got a few minutes left here. Can you tell us what region of Turkey you were in? Because I'd like to compare that to where Joe's been going.
So I was in Eastern Turkey.
Okay.
Western Turkey is near Greece, but Eastern Turkey is actually closer to Georgia. And I climbed up Mount Ararat.
Okay, yes.
Where we celebrated the very first Mass on the summit of Mount Ararat.
That's incredible.
In recorded history, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, when we were up there, it was the Feast of Our Lady of Snows. And we constructed an altar out of snow because we had nothing else to celebrate Mass on. So we made an altar out of snow. It was about 3 feet high.
That's incredible.
And on the Feast of Our Lady of Snows. And while the priest was vesting, preparing for Mass, a bee flew into the tent. Now, that's absolutely incredible because bees cannot survive at the altitude we were at, which was 17,000 feet. So we look at this, and the bee is also symbolic of Our Lady. So we looked at that as kind of indicative that Our Lady was very well pleased with what we were doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you first told me that story, I was absolutely stunned. Like, of course, the poetry of Our Lady of Snows and the snow, that's beautiful. But when you told me that a bee appeared on the top of the mountain, I was like, okay. Clearly, someone was pleased that you were celebrating Mass on top of Mount Ararat. So anyway, I could have talked about this for a long time. I'm looking forward to discussing it with Joe. We're probably going to spend an entire after show on just all the different details of his trip because this is fascinating. But
probably several after shows.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There's a lot more images to show. But Joe's going to be able to explain it even better. But just keep Joe and the Father Bishop Strickland and the pilgrims in your prayers. They're going to be pretty busy heading around. I know they're going to Ephesus eventually, and the island of Patmos. So keep their travels in your prayers. But
absolutely,
we'll be back with Dr. Ann Hendershott is coming up next. So stay tuned. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network is dedicated to answering the critical need of access to quality, consistent, professional, and proven Catholic programming. We cannot rely on other media outlets to properly represent our Church. Catholic Radio reaches Catholics, non-Catholic Christians, and non-believers alike. As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent of your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported.
Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto.
The St. Thomas More House of Prayer, a Catholic retreat center, prays the Liturgy of the Hours each day, starting with the Office of Readings at 5:30 a.m. and ending with night prayer at 8 o'clock p.m. Nestled in a peaceful, rustic setting, it's the perfect place to converse with God and discern His will for your life. The St. Thomas More House of Prayer is open to the public and can be booked by individuals or groups for retreats. We're located at 365 Hill City Road in Cranberry, Pennsylvania. To book a visit or learn more, visit liturgyofthehours.org or call 814-676-1910. That's 814-676-1910.
Catholic radio has just been a lifesaver for me. I still listen to it every day. I start my day with it. I listen to it all day long as much as I can. I am very grateful for it.
It's just an amazing thing to have as I am new to Catholicism. Obviously, it's not only helping me, but it's helping so many other people on their walk.
Thank you. God bless you for iCatholic Radio. It has changed my life.
Donate today at thestationofthecross.com.
Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your guest host, Michael Hichborn, filling in for Joe McClane, who's battling time pirates. Here are your headline news. Fourth New Orleans jail escapee captured. 6 inmates still on the loose. A 4th New Orleans jail escapee has been captured, but 6 inmates are still on the loose since 10 of them broke out of the New Orleans Parish Jail last Friday. New Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams said that, "I am personally afraid, not just for myself, but for my lawyers who tried the case against still-at-large escapee Derek Groves, who was convicted of murdering 2 men in 2018. The 6 men are still on the run, are reportedly considered armed and dangerous." Ground News reports more severe weather pummels the central U.S. A series of deadly tornadoes and storms have struck the central U.S. since Friday, severely hitting Kentucky and Missouri. The storms come from a large weather system that caused at least 28 deaths across Kentucky, Missouri, and northern Virginia. St. Louis estimates damages above $1.6 billion, with 5 deaths and 38 injuries. Officials warned more storms are possible. Just the News reports FDA moving ingestible fluoride prescription drugs. The Food and Drug Administration is removing from the market concentrated ingestible fluoride prescription drug products for children. The FDA noted that these drugs are swallowed and ingested by infants and toddlers and have never been approved by the agency. Ingested fluoride has been shown to alter the gut microbiome, which is of magnified concern given the early development of the gut microbiome in childhood, said the FDA. Other studies have suggested an association between fluoride and thyroid disorders, weight gain, and possibly decreased IQs. And those are your headline news. Joining us now is Dr. Ann Hendershott. Ann Hendershott is professor of sociology and director of Veritas Center for Ethics in Public Life at Franciscan University of Steubenville, Ohio. She's the author of Politics of Envy from Crisis Publications. And today we're talking about her recent article in Crisis Magazine, Catholics Welcome the Beginning of a Paradigm Shift at the United Nations. Dr. Hendershott, it's good to see you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Michael. I'm happy to be on. It's good to meet you in person. I read all of your information. In fact, I use a lot of your information.
Oh, wonderful.
In my articles. So thank you.
Yeah, I think we met many years ago at a Catholic identity it was a Catholic leadership conference. Diehl Hudson introduced us.
I remember that was a long time ago.
A lifetime ago.
It was great. It's great to see you again. Thanks.
Likewise.
In fact, some of your information is so helpful. I don't know where you get all this data or where you have time to collect it all, but I don't, so I appreciate it.
That's why we do what we do, so that the bigger brains can take the information and you put it to useful. So here we have this article where Catholics are welcoming a paradigm shift at the United Nations. Why don't you tell us what's going on?
Oh, the United Nations. I've been writing about them for probably 30 years. And you too. I mean, you've been not quite that long, but so that's why I appreciate your information. The United Nations is such a terrible place. It just is. It's a beautiful building, I guess. But terrible things go on in there. And I was very happy because usually I'm writing angry articles about the United Nations. But we have reason to celebrate. The Trump administration is the new sheriff in town at the United Nations. And things are changing. There really is a paradigm shift in that we're talking about abortion again and the evils of abortion. And we're talking about maybe not teaching children that same-sex behavior is something to celebrate in Nigeria or Uganda, because that's what they're doing. The United Nations has this fund, UNESCO, where they go into schools in Africa and try to convince students there, children, that same-sex behavior is quite all right. When in their country, it's illegal. Sodomy is illegal in these countries. But the United Nations doesn't have a problem with that. But the reason I was so happy with this new initiative by the Trump administration, it's not an initiative, it's just a continuation of the pro-life policies that have always been in place in this country, because we don't want to impose our values on Catholic countries, on countries that are traditional. But they have been. And there's something called Agenda 2030 at the UN. And the Trump administration says, nah, I don't think so. We're not buying onto that. He said the United States appreciates sovereignty, and we think that we should be a sovereign nation, and we think other people should have their independence, and we should not be imposing same-sex behavior and abortion and weird climate controls on these other countries. And so I was like, whoa, this is wonderful. Finally, the UN has an ally besides, I mean, the Holy See is there, and, you know, the Vatican has an influence there, but we're not voting. We don't have a Catholic vote. But the Trump administration is representing us in a lot of ways there. I mean, they're not intentionally representing Catholics. I don't want people to think that we're imposing our Catholic values, even though we'd like to. I would love to see the Holy See have a vote there. That's not going to happen. We're just happy to have a place at the table. So that's why I wrote the article.
You know, one of the things that jumped out at me from the article, because this is something I've been jumping up and down about for the last 10 years, Edward Hartney, who is the representative, the United States representative at the United Nations, you wrote this in your article. You said that he reminded the General Assembly that although the Trump administration, quote, strongly supports efforts to sustain peace and pursue diplomatic solution, Agenda 2030 and the SDGs advance a program of soft global governance that is inconsistent with U.S. sovereignty and adverse to the rights and interests of Americans. This, I mean, what he said there is specifically and precisely everything that I've been saying about the United Nations and the SDGs and Agenda 2030 for the last 15 years. When I first discovered the Millennium Development Goals, I've been saying this is global governance, and they are pushing global governance through the United Nations because of this program. I can't tell you how happy I am that somebody finally said it.
Well, me too. And it's just almost unbelievable. I mean, every day, Trump will say, aren't you tired of winning? But I'll never get tired of winning something like this. This is wonderful. This is fantastic. And I love to kind of like do a happy dance in front of Catholics for Choice. Now, for your listeners who don't know Catholics for Choice, you must know of them, a heretical fake Catholic organization who has been at the United Nations trying to get rid of the Holy See's influence in every way they can. They had a big campaign a while back that nobody signed on to, but they called it the sea change because they wanted to get rid of the Holy See. They didn't want them to even have a place at the table there. They didn't want to have any voice at the United Nations. But it was a total failure. But that doesn't stop them. This woman named Frances Kissling, who's no longer in charge, but she's like Hillary Clinton. She won't get off the stage. She was just in March at a conference saying the Holy See has as much right to be at the UN as they do in Disneyland. She just says mean things. She's a very mean person, and she's all in for choice and bringing abortion to these countries through a form of global governance. They call it soft governance, but it's not soft. No. They tie food to your acceptance of abortion. They tie food and aid and medical aid to your acceptance of gender ideology and same-sex behavior. That's not soft governance. We're supposed to be helping people, not extorting them, because that's really what the Catholics for Choice do. And so they're really angry at the Trump administration, and Frances Kissling, even though she's not in charge, she's still in charge, and she gets a big platform. I was so happy to see how frustrated she is. So it was really happy to watch that.
Well, one of the things that we can understand about the United Nations and global governance and the way it all works, the Trump administration, one of its first actions was to defund USAID. You get all these acronyms, and the alphabet soup just runs through your head. USAID is one of the largest financial backers of UN programs in the world, because when what people don't understand about USAID is that USAID funds go towards different projects all around the world. They're supposed to be, providing food or shelter or medicine or whatever it is. And as you point out, usually there are ideological indications that are attached to that. But what people don't understand is that what they're creating are new supply chains that provide this global governance. And the UN, in establishing these supply chains and helping to formulate these programs to create these supply chains, it's supposed to integrate all of the countries of the world by tying them directly to these poorer countries, which ultimately makes the poor countries poorer because they no longer have the ability to produce these things on their own. They become wholly reliant on wealthy nations to provide them with living standards and their needs. And then, of course, you get that ideological attachment thrown into it as well, where they say, okay, now that you're addicted to our food and you're addicted to our medicine, if you want to continue receiving these things, you're going to start implementing these globalist and population control programs. And so what the Trump administration has done here, I agree with you. It's a victory. It's a big victory.
It's a huge victory. And when I say extortion, I mean, your listeners must think that's hyperbole, but it really isn't.
No, you're right.
It's like a mafia kind of thing. We'll make a deal that you can't refuse, because if you're dependent on food and dependent on medical supplies, you have to allow them to make you do what they want you to do. And so they have, UNESCO is one of the worst also. I mean, they're the education arm and certainly the population control arm of the UN. But UNESCO is I don't know what the acronym stands for, but education is in there. And what they do is we'll give you books for your schools, but the books are going to be like, Heather has two mommies and that kind of thing. You want math books, but we're also going to give you these readers that, normalize same-sex behavior, normalize abortion, normalize sexuality. They're trying to introduce children to forms of sexuality that they're not ready for. So this is really good news. And USAID has no business in doing this. But so the Trump elections have consequences. And I think Catholics should be celebrating right now.
Well, and I think that what we're going to see, because the United States is the largest provider of finances to the United Nations of all the nations of the world. The fact that Trump has signaled a withdrawal of support from their USAID, or I'm sorry, their SDG programs and their SDG agendas, do you think it's possible at this point that the Trump administration could say, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and pull our funds. We're going to take our ball and go home. We don't want to play with you guys anymore because you're impossible to play with.
Well, they are impossible to play with. Absolutely impossible to play with. I just don't see him doing it that drastically. I think this incrementalism is a wonderful idea. And, there was that debate about abortion is incremental. Incrementalism can eventually get to where we want to go. And this is a huge start. It really is. Agenda 2030 was a disaster, just an absolute disaster. And we've completely pulled out of that. So that's a good start. And I think if he continues, show up every year at their General Assembly and do a little more. It's just hard to do it all at once. So I do see that in the future. Yes, I do.
One of the things that I've been following, of course, with regard to Agenda 2030 is the fact that since Pope Francis was elected to the papacy back in 2013, was a consistent push from the Vatican to support the Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. And now that we have a new pope and a new president, maybe we're going to see some change. We'll be back in the next segment to continue this conversation. Support for the program comes from iCatholic Mobile, a wireless phone service for individuals and families that provide support to Catholic media, including the Station of the Cross Media Network. More information is available at iCatholicMobile.com. For those today on the radio side, join us on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, X, or the website to hang out with us in the after show. Otherwise, we'll be right back.
Catholic radio has just been a lifesaver for me. I still listen to it every day. I start my day with it. I listen to it all day long as much as I can. I am very grateful for it.
It's just an amazing thing to have as I am new to Catholicism. Obviously, it's not only helping me, but it's helping so many other people on their walk.
Thank you. God bless you for iCatholic Radio. It has changed my life.
Donate today at thestationofthecross.com.
Here's the question for your non-Catholic friend. At your church, there's probably some great music, enthusiastic clapping, and maybe even a shout or an amen. But where's the church-wide act of contrition and the confessing of sins? Well, here's your 3 best friendship tools for Catholic evangelism. Number 1, the Bible and the church. Psalm 47 does declare, shout unto God. It does say, clap your hands, all you people. But there's one more highly valuable physical expression. Strike the chest. What's that? 3 times your fist strikes your chest for external admission that my sins were my fault. Secondly, order of the Mass. Within the first 60 seconds of a Mass, the congregation says together, through my fault, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. Each of those are followed by my firm strike upon my chest. And my take out of Luke 18 says, but the corrupt tax collector dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed, but beat upon his chest in sorrow. Proper order is confession before praise, sorrow before joy. And this makes sense. Why? Because remember what Mom said, dinner first, then dessert. So don't forget to strike. Find me online at Smarty Pants Catholic Evangelism.
The Catholic Current, bringing Christ to the world and the world to Christ.
And we see the spirit of that thing, entering the church in a very specific way with St. Pius X back at the turn of the last century, and then on into the Second Vatican Council era. And the spirit of a council is the great coming out party of the modernist revolution, which has its roots in that same Enlightenment philosophy of the 18th century.
The Catholic Current, 5 p.m. Eastern, from the Station of the Cross and on the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. We are continuing our conversation with Dr. Ann Hendershott about the United Nations. And before we went to the break, I was talking about how for the last 12 years, the former pontificate, I'm still getting used to the new one, the former pontificate was very wedded to the Sustainable Development Goals and the promotion of the United Nations and these globalist programs. But now that we have an American Pope, and one of the things that your article here, the title of it is Catholics Welcome the Beginning of a Paradigm Shift at the United Nations. Do you think that we actually have a real hope now for a paradigm shift coming from the Vatican as well? Perhaps we'll see more of an alignment between what Pope Leo XIV sees with regard to pro-life and pro-family issues at the United Nations, and how it aligns with the Trump administration's also pro-life, pro-family ideologies, and maybe the two can work together. I have a lot of hope for that kind of thing. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I do too. I think we're so blessed. God has been good to us. I think I'm so happy. I've written 3 articles about welcoming Pope Leo because he is a strong, not that Francis wasn't a strong pro-life pope. He certainly was. But I think Pope Francis fell in love with the climate agenda at the United Nations. And I don't think he saw the other part. After Laudate Si, he was like, oh, I love those sustainable goals at the UN. So let's work with them. Not really realizing, perhaps, that when you work with them on climate goals become defined very broadly to include gender ideology. I know that's silly, but it's the same thing with social justice. You can define it any way you want. Social justice at many Catholic colleges is defined as access to abortion. So that's how crazy it can get. So I'm just thrilled with our new Pope Leo. And, he started Villanova's pro-life Villanova when he was a student there and 50 years ago, and it's still there today. That. Oh, yes, he did. He was the first one to start the pro-life club at Villanova. He was a very courageous undergraduate. I wrote an article for Crisis welcoming him and talking about Villanova, that I think Pope Leo is a gift to all Catholic colleges, but especially to Villanova because they're having a moment now they should celebrate. But Villanova has problems too, and I know that's a whole other show, but they have a lavender graduation, they have transgender bathrooms, we won't get into that now. But Pope Leo, I think, will be such a great ally in this fight. with the Vatican because the Holy See does not have a vote, but they have a very big pulpit. And if Pope Leo gets behind that pulpit along with the representative at the Vatican, from the Vatican, the Holy See, the sky's the limit, I think. I think it's just wonderful because I think Pope Leo understands better than Pope Francis does. Not to criticize Pope Francis, but I don't think he realized the hidden agenda there. Well, it's not even hidden, but I don't know that he realized how bad things were. It's not hidden. No, not at all. I mean, when you have, the Gates Foundation really embedded in the UN and giving all that money, it's hard to surmount that. It really is. And I think Pope Leo can make a difference.
I think so too. I've written a number of articles for the Lepanto Institute over the years, going over the history of the United Nations. I mean, the United Nations from its founding had a very socialist ideology. Its first architect, Alger Hiss, was a Soviet spy. If you look at each of the secretary generals of the United Nations, every single one of them was a socialist. You look at the agendas of the United Nations, all of their programs, UNDG, UNDP, UNESCO, UNICEF, all of these different agencies, as you have pointed out, are very much in favor of gender ideology and promoting women's right to abortion, pushing population control agendas with contraception and all of that stuff. So when you start looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, which were primarily written up by Jeffrey Sachs, who is a horrible economist. I mean, the man, he's got a host of issues, but the Sustainable Development Goals themselves, I went through and systematically analyzed each of the goals, and the vast majority of them align almost perfectly with either the planks of communism or with some aspect of what the international communist community had wanted or desired, such as universal access to healthcare, which almost invariably includes abortion and contraception. So I think you're right, and at least that's my hope, is that Pope Francis was really kind of oblivious to what these goals really were all about, how the United Nations was completely formulated for this idea of soft global governance, soft in air quotes. But as we look forward and we try to see how we move forward and how we can move past these agendas, what do you think the Trump administration may do next, now that they've signaled, hey, look, we're not going to be involved in any of these ideological jumps to population control and gender ideology? What's the next step? How do they continue to foster this new paradigm shift that you referred to?
Well, I think the influence of the Trump administration at the UN is significant. And I love the relationship between the Trump administration and Pope Leo that's already starting. Now, I don't want to scare the non-Catholics who are listening to think that there's going to be a huge Catholic takeover of the country, but I headed an institute, the Veritas Center for Ethics and Public Life, and our whole agenda is to get Catholic teachings into the public square as a place at the table, as part of the debate. And I think now we're seeing it happen in the Trump administration. There are strong, J.D. Vance is one of my favorites, and he came to one of our conferences at Franciscan before he even became a senator. And I thought he could be the future for us in this country. He would get us a place at that table where we would have Catholic teachings respected. Pope Leo is so promising. Just the name Leo, you have talked about this before yourself, Michael, about Rerum Novarum. He is very anti-communism because Pope Leo was very the Rerum Novarum is very anti-communism, anti-modernism. Right. And so I think just taking that name, to me, says it all. As soon as I heard that he took this name, I was like, whoa, this is something special. And the UN must be a little afraid because that communist agenda that they have been pushing since the beginning, I did not know about Alger Hiss, so thank you. I'll use that someday. Thank you. But I had no idea that it was that strong right from the start, but I knew it was that strong of course, recently. The communist agenda is going to be gone, I believe, because the Trump administration won't be a part of it. I mean, it'll take a while, but it'll be gone.
Maybe that's why Catholics for Choice and Miss Kissling are so adamant about trying to get the voice of the Vatican out of the United Nations. It's almost a reverse exorcism. They would love to get rid of the Catholic voice and try and instill their demonic ideologies. Please God, we do see a stronger Vatican, authentically Catholic presence at the United Nations. We only have a couple of minutes left, so why don't you tell us a little bit about where people can find you and how they can follow you, and if there's anything else that you'd like to touch upon before we go.
Well, I'm just very optimistic about the future. That's why I was thrilled to be on the show today. I'm at Franciscan, where it's always a good day for Catholics because it's a very faithful Catholic college. I just wrote a new book called Lamp in the Darkness about the faithful Catholic schools that can make a difference for the future. And so, yeah, I'm just very optimistic. So if they go to Franciscan University, they'll find me. Thanks.
Wonderful. That's all that we have for today. Thank you so much for being on the program with us. Join us on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, X, or our website to hang out with us in the after show. Otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow with Brent Haynes and Anthony Abate of Avoiding Babylon. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.
So what did you think of today's show? Let's discuss that right now in the after show. Your take on the after take. Comment, interact live with me and the team. All you need to do is search for one of our live video feeds on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, LinkedIn, and elsewhere. Simply search for the Station of the Cross, Joe McClane, or A Catholic Take. I'm looking forward to seeing you and interacting with you directly. It all starts right now. It's the after show.
And we're back. Welcome to the after show, everyone. We made it, and neither of our voices gave out.
Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God. So now we can have an after show where we have to keep talking for another half hour.
Yeah, hopefully, my voice will be stronger tomorrow.
We're both kind of dealing with it, as they say.
Yes.
So I do have some hellos here in the Telegram group. There was a lot of messages going on overnight. The usual very early morning good mornings, or late good nights. Paul was chiming in. Hello, Paul. James, of course. James 6897 in Romania, issuing the first good morning of the day. Joe McClane was sharing some news. Some terrible news out of Kentucky. Archbishop of Louisville discouraging faithful from kneeling for Holy Communion. It's terrible. Hoping maybe we'll see some. It's sounding more and more. So the reports from a lot of priests and people in Peru, in Chiclayo, are that Pope Leo is very much a say the black, do the red kind of guy. Yep. There was a great, excellent article in The Pillar about that, interviewing a lot of priests who worked with him and that sort of thing. So maybe we'll actually get to see a little bit of encouragement to follow the proper norms, because just following the proper norms in the GIRM would go a long way towards improving reverence in your average Catholic liturgy. So God willing, we'll
what are
see
you talking about? I mean, aren't they supposed to be allowed to have rainbow vestments? And
yeah, exactly.
Pita bread mass.
Yeah, those weaponized ambiguities, like those are dangerous. But if you following the norms, the norms would be a vast improvement. In fact, the norm is actually Ad Orientem in the Novus Ordo Missae. So we'll see what comes of that. But there's some very encouraging interviews with priests who worked with him in Peru. Let's see, anyone else in the Telegram? Anna Pierman, of course. Sharon, good morning to you, Sharon. Let's see, Joe is sending a lot of videos of crazy cliff sides and monasteries that are hanging off the sides of mountains and all kinds of stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, no
crazy. Hey, you climbed Mount Ararat, weren't you? Aren't you good with heights?
No. The only way I could climb was to look at the ground.
Yeah, just look. Keep your head down.
Just looking, keep where my foot is going next, and then not looking back. I don't want to turn into a pillar of salt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some of these are. I mean, these are some crazy pictures. I'm looking forward to Joe explaining all of the details here. He explained a little bit, but not everything. Kevin Jibers there. Good morning to you, Kevin. Anyone else? Damon's there. Jane Steves. Good morning, Jane. Becky Hansen. Good morning to you. Anyone else? Anyone else on the Telegram side? Nick C is over there. Good morning, Nick. Eileen. Good morning, Eileen. Getting a lot of Skynet references about AI stuff. Mary. Good morning, Mary. Let's see. I think that's it in the Telegram group for so far this morning. But Joe's definitely been active. Facebook. I know we got some folks on Facebook hanging out. David. Good morning. June. Jane's over there on Facebook as well. Mimi. Patty. Good morning to you all. Nicole, good morning. Let's see. Yeah, it's so cool. Many of these places they're going to on the pilgrimage are heavily mentioned in the readings each day over the past week and the upcoming week. Yeah, especially anything mentioning the Acts of the Apostles. Acts of the Apostles and then in Paul's letters, you're going to see all the references to where Joe and the pilgrims are visiting. The two main places they're going to, I believe, are Patmos and Ephesus. I think those are their two main stops, but clearly they're seeing some really, really amazing stuff along the way as well.
When I was a kid, I thought that the Acts of the Apostles was an object, not a
a useful tool.
Yes, exactly.
This is how we spread the faith, by wielding, threatening people with the Acts of the Apostles.
That's right.
That's great. See, now, of course, now I'm just picturing St. Boniface, who did use an Acts of the Apostles to chop down the pagan tree. So
that's right.
So there's more truth to that than we think.
Well, we do have the most militant faith in the entire world. We've got missiles, Berettas, and
yes, well said. Intercontinental patristic missiles.
Yes,
but. That's great. Excellent. Speaking of making our voice heard at the United Nations.
We also engage in germ warfare.
Yes. I've made that joke before. Because people are like, "Oh, the germ." It's like, no, it's the germ.
It's the germ.
It's the germ. The GIRM.
Yep.
Got to pronounce it the germ. Let's see. Anyone else? Don Franco's there. Good morning, Don Franco. Says, nice to see you hosting, Michael, and says we're doing a great job. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Rumble, pretty busy on Rumble today, which is nice. Nancy Noreva, good morning. Honey West, Guaguenza61. Matt Foltz, good morning. And Matt Foltz also caught it. Joe sounds like the male non-thief version of Carmen Sandiego. I remember making that joke at some point because he's even got a big hat with a wide brim.
Yeah, that's
right. On his adventures. I got to find the picture of him on the mountainside if I can, because he had his hat on and he was carrying what looked like an enormous lance or something, but I think it was an arm for his camera. Gotta see if I can find those pictures. Sci-Fi Mike is there on Rumble as well. Lynn Pine is there. Robert DeBruce. Good morning, Robert DeBruce. If I can find more pictures here. Lots of nice pictures of the pilgrimage folks. I'm not seeing the one on the mountainside, but I am seeing. Here's a cool picture of Joe in some ruins. Let me bring this up on screen. There's Joe with his adventuring hat, looking very Indiana Jones-esque.
Is that mini-me next to him?
Yeah, the perspective is crazy on this. I think he's several layers of stone down. I'm pretty sure that's the effect that's going on there. Let me see if I can find some other pictures here. These are this is the ruins of the octagon at Philippi. And then another shrine.
Every time I hear the octagon, I think of a couple of fighters who get into a ring.
Yeah, exactly. Man, just gorgeous countryside. Absolutely gorgeous countryside.
I don't think I've ever really looked at the countryside of Greece. I don't even know what the climate's like there.
Well, it looks very sunny. There's a lot of really beautiful hills.
I mean, are we talking California or are we talking Florida?
It seems more like California than Florida, but
if it's California-esque, I could handle it. If it's Florida-like, forget about it.
No humidity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the, what those bits of climate are like.
When I was a kid, we lived in San Diego for 5 years, and I'll tell you, you don't get closer to paradise than San Diego.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's a cool 75 degrees throughout the year with low humidity and a nice breeze, all year long. I mean, that's San Diego. You just don't get closer to paradise than that.
That sounds great. My older sister was born in San Diego. My mom lived there for a while. So.
All right.
Yeah, it's a. I've never been though. I've never been to San Diego. I've never been to California. The furthest west I've ever been was just west of Calgary in Canada, in the Canadian Rockies, which are magnificent, really gorgeous. But I've never made it to California. Someday I'll make it out to the West Coast. I'd love to do a cross country trip and see.
You should.
And see the sites all the way along the U.S. I want to show this because this is interesting. Banquet utensils and vessels from the tomb of Philip II.
Oh wow!
So there's a little right up here, but let's move to the images. And I'm sure at some point it'll switch. There it is. Lots of silver.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that's all real silver.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure it's not plated or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Although, I mean, there could be polished pewter there, maybe. I don't know.
I doubt it.
I'm going to guess it's all silver because it's from...
No, that looks like silver.
From the tomb of the king of Macedonia. So.
Mm-hmm.
This is some kind of... let's see if it'll transition over.
No, it looks like it's stuck.
Yeah, it's stuck. Come on. Move over. Oh, no, it's not. It's not showing this. It's like elaborately worked gold decorations from the tomb.
Okay.
And it's not showing. It won't show. What the heck? Okay, anyway.
Elaborate golden diadem.
Yeah, exactly. And something that contains Philip's... the bones of one of Philip's wives or something like that. But it won't. There it is. Okay, now it's back. But just take a look at the gold working on here.
Wasn't Alexander the Great tutored by who was it, Aristotle?
I believe it was Aristotle.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is. See, I love history, so even the non-Catholic things they're checking out in the pilgrimage. I'm sure Joe is geeking out as well because he's a history buff. But
that is an incredible crown.
Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Like, look at how intricate the work is.
Man.
Isn't it amazing? We need to get we need to get something like that for the next papal tiara.
You're right. Even at the height of Christendom, you didn't see crowns like that.
Not quite. Yeah, you know what? Let me bring up, take this off screen so I can actually find it. I'm going to try and find an image of some of the crowns of Christendom because, they are still very well made, but, there's a reason people, I see sometimes Catholics protesting against the use of the phrase Dark Ages. Because the phrase has been used incorrectly to describe the Middle Ages, the height of Christendom, which was a glorious time. It was the peak of human civilization in many ways.
Right.
But Dark Ages is a correct term for the centuries after the fall of the Roman Empire, when basically civilization had collapsed, and it was only the Catholic faith keeping the flame of science and learning and knowledge and culture alive, especially in the monasteries.
Yeah, the barbarians destroyed almost everything.
The Dark Ages did exist, but they were much earlier than the Middle Ages, which came afterwards. And a lot was lost. The monasteries kept a lot of stuff alive, but there were many things that were lost. Many knowledges of just intricate craftsmanship and stuff. that had to kind of get built back up over the course of time.
Let's remind everybody that ancient Rome had flushing toilets.
Yeah, exactly.
They lost indoor plumbing. That's one of the things that my wife says that she appreciates about modern civilization is indoor plumbing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to show here. So this is a crown of the Holy Roman Emperors. Now this is from the 10th century, I think, onwards, is the estimate. So we did eventually get back to a certain level of kind of knowing what we were doing. But look at, the diadem that we saw before was centuries and centuries before this.
Right.
So, people have been very very handy for a long time.
Yeah, I see pearls, opals, sapphires, emeralds, rubies.
Pretty amazing. And note the shape, because this is something interesting, because we have this idea of crowns being just kind of a circlet. Yep. And that's our common image of the crown of thorns that our Lord wore, but the crown that he wore was almost certainly more like a cap of thorns, because most crowns were more like, covering the head, a cap than than just a circlet or a diadem. But again, we saw from that tomb of Philip II that they did have those diadems and decorative circlets as well. So
it almost looks like what are those? What are those altarpieces? With the doors that close and you open it, it's got icons on the inside. What is that called?
Iconostasis?
No, that's
no. What am I thinking of?
There's
I know triptych.
The triptych. That's it.
Yeah.
So the crown, this particular crown, almost looks like a triptych. I mean,
with the panels.
Yeah, the panels. You can see. I think that's. That almost looks like an image there. I can't tell.
Yes, I think that is. I'm not sure who's on it, but might be able to find out. Let me take a look. It'll show any.
But it does. Yes. So it does have certain iconography on the. So it is. It's almost like a wearable triptych.
Yes, in a way. Yeah, like here, I'll show this one. This is.
Oh, there we go.
Yep, you've got our Lord with angels on either side of him. So they have these panels on either side. And notice that they have what we would think of as sort of an Eastern look, but this is from Europe, Central Europe. Yeah. So there's much crossover in the style, especially around this time period. So
very interesting.
Yep. So many rabbit holes to go down here just because of the images Joe uploaded. So we're probably going to spend a whole week of after shows talking about parts of his trip. But I'm looking forward to his report from visiting the tiny island of Navarone. But
the other interesting thing about these the gold work and everything else is that this is all hand done.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is that much of the gold work that we see today are pressed in a machine. Which is why it has very sharp, very defined features, and it looks extremely uniform. But goldsmiths, in trying to shape, whatever it is they were creating, whether it was a brooch or a crown like this.
Yeah.
The braiding on the exterior of that particular crown, that's extremely intricate and fine work that it's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
That crown, I am amazed.
The one from
that.
Philip II's tomb.
I am amazed at that.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
Because it's all one piece.
Yeah, unless they somehow connected them together in some way.
Yeah, well, it's not
I don't
like
know
they
how.
had soldering. I don't know how either.
How do you do something like that?
Yeah.
Right? It's just incredible.
I would love to talk to a master goldsmith and have him explain to me the process by which this was made. I would love to know.
Yeah. There's a topic. There's a nice change of pace topic for the show. Let's get an actual goldsmith on.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
That would be cool.
Like here's for comparison again, the one of the crowns of the Holy Roman Emperors, which again, it's not quite as it doesn't seem quite as what's the word? As elaborate in sort of detail. But there's still a lot of really elaborate work going on here to hold each gem and to just hold all the pearls.
Looks like it's missing a gem there on the left.
I'm sure I'm sure something fell out over the years, or maybe was stolen.
Out.
But what's interesting is that none of these gems are cut in a fancy modern way.
No,
they're
a little
shaped
bit
somewhat,
more rough.
Yeah,
they're a little bit more rough.
Yeah, but
there
really
you go. That's what you ought to do, is reach out to the Smithsonian or some institute that can explain the intricate details and the processes and the artifacts. That would be really a cool show.
That would be great. Oh my goodness! Here's another.
Look at that.
Look at this thing.
I
think this is another circlet or another diagram.
That may have, and I mean, I could be wrong, but that may have been created through a dipping process.
Perhaps, yeah.
Because a lot of when you dip organic material in gold, specifically like plant matter, the plant matter will burn away, but the gold will take on the form of the matter, which is why you can get like dipped rose. You can take a rose and dip it in gold, and the gold will burn away the rose petals, but take on the shape of the rose.
Yeah, that looks like it has to have been.
It almost looks like it has to be.
They do, right? But though, yeah, it's crazy. Like, how would you do something like that? Like, there's you can see like the little acorns, like just individually. Like, yeah, it must have been a dipping process, but it's just hard to. It's hard to tell. I wonder if they have any details on this. But, see, we can spend forever just looking at pictures of crowns and everything.
Oh yeah, no, I could spend forever in a museum looking at ancient artifacts.
Yeah, exactly.
But a lot of these, sometimes you have certain forms of gold work and I mean, just the process of making certain things that they had, that it's a lost art. We can't do it. We can't replicate it.
Exactly. Here's a picture. You can see it right on the top there. That might be a monastery. I'm not sure. At the very top of this cliff, like that looks like a movie scene. Truth is way cooler than fiction.
I'm just picturing my 2-year-old looking over the cliff.
Oh gosh.
And yeah. I mean, that my 2-year-old has no fear. He has no sense of his own mortality whatsoever.
Of course.
He'll be at the top of the stairs and he'll be waving down to us at the bottom of the stairs. And I'll be like, Damien, get down from there. And I'll start walking up the stairs. And what does he do? He leans forward.
Oh, of course.
And
terrible. He might learn. Maybe once he falls off something, he'll learn.
Yeah. Like that monastery up there on top of the cliff.
Hopefully not that monastery.
No, I have a feeling that my kid's going to be some sort of extreme sport junkie.
Oh goodness. Okay, see, so here's another crazy elaborate.
That's got to be gold dipped. That's got to be gold dipped.
See, like the way that it almost looks though, like the leaves have been kind of hammered out and then maybe stuck together onto this.
So one of the things that they could do is if they dipped the leaves individually, and then had a long stem, like a wire stem that they could use to wrap around the base.
Okay.
And then they could apply a little bit of gold to fix it there.
Yeah.
And then even to shape the leaf, because the organic matter was burned away.
Yeah.
They could then shape it while the gold was a little bit soft.
Okay.
But I mean, gold is a really, really, really soft metal. So it's easy to shape, but that makes it also easy to ruin.
Yes, exactly.
So I don't know if this is an alloy or how much.
No matter what the method, this is insanely detailed and careful craftsmanship.
And delicate. I mean, it's very delicate
work. Yeah, exactly. But wow, man.
But why would you put something like that on an urn?
Maybe they're just displaying it that way. I mean, again, these are from the tomb of Philip II. So these are things that they basically were like, he died, so we're just going to leave these in the tomb with him.
Right. So not meant to be touched.
Yeah, exactly.
I also find it fascinating that, even the ancients, what are they doing? They're putting gold on the head of the one in charge. They're so, you think of a gold crown. I mean, that's one thing. But what do we think of when we think of the saints? We think of them as wearing a gold halo, which is a spiritual crown. So, and St. Paul tells us that we run the race not to win a perishable crown, but an eternal crown of glory.
Yep.
So you have this physical allusion to a golden crown that then becomes a kind of a tangible reflection of the eternal glow, that halo that we would possess in eternity.
Yeah. And it's one of these things that's universal, to cultures.
Right.
It's like I always laugh when they say like, oh, all these cultures have this founding myth of a great flood. Oh, this must be, it must be a fake story that everyone has.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's like exactly the wrong logical conclusion to draw.
Right.
It's ridiculous. So I'm going to show this, yet another one. Sorry for anyone who's not interested in jewels and ancient artifacts, but Michael and I are geeking out about this stuff.
Yeah,
so this is the golden myrtle wreath of Philip II's wife that was laid on top of the gold and ivory couch of the antechamber. So here's another one.
Uh-huh.
It'll focus a little bit so you can see some of the detail. But
a gold and ivory couch doesn't sound too comfortable to sit on.
Yeah, I'm wondering. Yeah, unless maybe if the ivory is smooth enough, it's it's like a nice wood chair,
Right. So
but
the
it's
ivory
a couch.
was
You're supposed to
probably
relax. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You could always put
ivory-
pillows on top of it, right?
and that's what they did. Yeah.
Exactly. But this is like there's some really amazing detail here on the myrtle. It almost looks like. See, those look like they're not. Some of them look like they're not real flowers, and then other ones look very much like real flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so hard to tell how they might have done it.
Well, the leaves, I mean, this all looks hand done.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at this through a projection through
exactly.
a small window on my computer, so I can't see
Exactly.
the details. But as I look at it, I mean, the leafing, it looks like it was done with a hammer. The flower petals in the center of the flower looks like it was done by hammer. So
yeah.
And they may have also had a press. They had press forms in ancient Greece that they used as well. They used press forms sometimes for minting coins.
Mm-hmm.
So because they were pressing the gold rather than pouring it into a mold.
Yeah. Man, this is fascinating stuff. Beverly asks if these are specifically Greek. Yes, Greek, Macedonian. The Greeks and the Macedonians argue a lot over what to call it.
Yeah.
Because of Philip of Macedon, but they're spreading Greek. But what kind of Greek? It's so
just call it Hellenistic.
Sure, Hellenistic. Yeah, just use a generic term so that it makes everyone upset instead of just
That's right.
instead of one or the other.
That's right. I'm an equal opportunity offender.
Yeah, exactly. I see a lot of arguments like that online. People still argue about Philip II and
I know
Alexander the Great and all that.
Right.
Just,
was the Greek Empire, and then of course you think about what was going on here, and Alexander the Great pushing on into Asia and everything else, and it was around this same time period that you have Antiochus going after the Jews, in which the Maccabees rose up. So
yes. The Holy Maccabees, which actually, speaking of the Maccabees, I was just about to bring up Alexander the Great, of whom there are many stories told nowadays from a secular modern worldview. Alexander the Great was always considered a noble pagan, a great and noble pagan,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a concept in the Middle Ages called the Nine Worthies,
Mm-hmm.
and the Nine Worthies were 3 great Christian rulers, 3 great Jewish rulers from before, from the Old Covenant, and 3 great pagan rulers. And these were examples, the highest examples of chivalry and virtue from these three categories. And the three Christian rulers were Charlemagne, King Arthur, and Godfrey of Bouillon, the Crusader.
Okay. Yep.
So those were there were variations here and there, but the three most common Christian ones were Carolus Magnus, Charles the Great, Charlemagne, King Arthur, and Godfrey of Bouillon. The three great Jewish leaders were, if I recall correctly, Joshua, David, and Judas Maccabeus, the leader of the Maccabean revolt.
Yep.
And then the three great pagans were Hector of Troy, Alexander the Great, and Julius Caesar. So those are the three noble pagan princes from before the coming of Christ, and they were considered great examples of chivalry. So you hear a lot of modern scholarship about Alexander and about the Greeks, but the medieval Christians considered both Caesar and Alexander as examples of natural virtue, of a certain pagan virtue, good enough to be sort of honored as prefigurements of the in their own way of the Christian knights of the Middle Ages. So something to consider as a reproach to modern scholarship, because we all know what modern scholarship's priorities are, which is usually to say that everyone was gay and everyone was degenerate and terrible, and no one was really heroic or great after all.
Right. Yeah.
So
there are no heroes.
Exactly. Just horrible people doing horrible things,
right.
And the only things we praise them for are things that are horrible, like being rampant sodomites or something like that. That's the only thing modern scholarship praises anyone for doing, or being transvestites or something. So. Where we live in times where Caligula is like an iconic figure,
oh my goodness.
As opposed to, and then when they try and turn all these heroic figures into imitations of that. But Alexander the Great was always considered a noble sort of figure. He was a conqueror. He was not Christian, and he was not a devout Jew, but he had a certain pagan virtue as far as being brave in battle and being fair to his men and that sort of thing. He was considered someone who possessed virtues that a knight could emulate.
Right.
So
1,000 years from now,
tiers.
1,000 years from now, the scholarship of that era will determine that John Wayne was also a homosexual.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be using the critical method to make.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. All of his protestations against homosexuals means that he was a homosexual.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you hate spiders, that must mean you actually love spiders.
Right. That's right.
Greg asks if I'm talking about San Francisco. That's what a lot of the scholarship is done.
Yeah.
Everyone, all the scholarship wants to make everyone a resident of San Francisco. Lost Krill says righteous pagan. He thinks that's the term. That could be that.
Virtuous pagan.
Virtuous pagan, righteous pagan.
Yep.
And this is
this is
a similar approach to what St. Thomas took to Aristotle, for example.
I was just going to point that out. When I was at Christendom, we used to refer to lovingly Saint Aristotle. So.
Exactly. Yeah, there's the Middle Ages was much more kind of embracing of such things, because this all existed before Christ, so they had an excuse to not know about Christ, because God was speaking through the Israelites. So when you weren't part of that, you were you had to rely on natural virtue, and so they had
not only that, but the Israelites were very insular. They did not proselytize, and it was extremely rare for a pagan to take on the Jewish belief. So, but what's fascinating is that because of the preaching of Daniel, you had the pagans coming from the east in the form of the Magi that were bringing gifts to Christ. They were not Jews.
Yeah.
So you can see that the seeds that were being planted by the Jews in the pagan world bore fruit as Christendom came into existence. So it's there is a very interesting theology. It's hypothetical theology, or speculative theology, but we can at least hope that the ancient pagan world because this is before baptism, so they had a certain kind of hope for life in the afterlife with, when Christ went down into the limbo of the just.
Yeah.
That perhaps there is some hope for the pagans also in that sense.
Yeah.
So how that works, I don't know.
Again, it's speculative. There's nothing doctrinal about it, but it's interesting. Like they took that seriously. They took this interpretation seriously, and it reminds me of Virgil, the poet Virgil.
Yeah, that's right.
Messianic poem, the Eclogue. Yeah, the Messianic Eclogue, where many Christians interpreted it as a sort of pagan prophecy of the coming of Christ, and prophesying that he would come to Rome, and convert Rome in a very, it's through a glass darkly, as the apostle might say, but that it was possible. These seeds of the faith were planted, and they were there for a reason. They were there for when the missionaries came.
That's right.
From Paul on down. Same with Guadalupe, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and the pagan prophecies that helped lead to Our Lady's appearance, converting millions of South Americans. So, I had one question before we log off. I saw Colin asking if you ever took, Michael, a class with Miss Hickson at Christendom College.
I never did.
Okay.
So when I was at Christendom from 94 to 99. So I didn't know the Hicksons. In fact, I wasn't even really aware of their teaching at Christendom until several years later. So no, I never did.
Well, that answers that. So I think we'll wrap up for today so we can rest our voices.
Yes.
And we should have a good packed show tomorrow. We'll have Brent Haynes on to give us some updates. And we'll also have Anthony Abate of Avoiding Babylon, who I believe also is, let's see, he's on, I think he might be on with Dr. Anthony Stein this week as well. Okay. And then he's flying out to the Mediterranean, and he might cross paths with Joe. Just like they're trying to see if the timing works out. So we might get a selfie of Joe and Anthony finally meeting up in person in Greece of all places.
Right.
Which is funny. Like that's very globe-trotting adventure, like running into each other. But so that's possible. But he will be on the show tomorrow. We'll hang out. I'm sure he'll stay for the after show. So we should have a lot of fun.
That'll be fun. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. Great conversation with Dr. Hendershott today, and we'll see everyone tomorrow. God bless.